Good evening, everybody. So good to see you all here. Welcome to St. James United Methodist Church and this event put on by KCUR, your local NPR member station. And I know we have a lot of important ground to cover tonight, a lot of questions that you all have about what in the world is going on in our nation's capital. I want to begin with some really good news. I just visited with our two members of Congress. They are agreeing to make all your 401ks whole after the recent losses in recent days. After we're done tonight, if you just line up, Congressman Cleaver, Congresswoman Davids have the checks will just be coming off the assembly line here. So I do have some instructions for how we're going to proceed here this evening. And first off, thanks to St. James United Methodist, Pastor Cleaver, I saw him earlier, for being here. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And you should all know that we're going to record this for broadcast either probably Wednesday or Thursday on Up to Date at 9 a.m. weekdays on KCUR 89.3. So appropriate language would be appreciated. We don't have a bleep button here tonight, so appropriate language would be great. Here's how tonight's conversation is going to work. We're going to open with some remarks from our two members of Congress, and then we'll begin the Q&A with a few questions that were submitted in advance from all of you and others. Throughout the event, those of you in the audience, as well as those of you joining online, will be able to submit additional questions. We'll be taking them all night. For our guests here in the church, if you have a question, please write it down on one of the index cards that have been provided to you. Raise your hand once you've written it on your card, and a KCUR staffer in the aisles will be picking it up for you and collecting them and figuring out which ones we haven't asked yet and which ones we should ask. And I want to ask those staffers who will be collecting those cards to raise their hands right now so you know who they are. Sarah Morris, you got Kate, Peggy Lowe, and others right here who will be picking up your cards from you as we go along. For those of you who are listening on our live stream this evening, you can submit questions in the live stream chat. KCUR staffers, again, will be monitoring that chat. Hallie Jackson, one of my producers on Up to Date, is watching that. She'll be sharing your questions as we go along, okay? Throughout the night, I'll rotate asking questions from those of you in the audience, those of you joining us from our live stream, and those I already have here in front of me. We won't get to all of your questions, but I hope we can get to a whole lot of them. And again, I can appreciate, I think we all appreciate, this is a moment where so many of you have questions about what's going on out there, and we hope to have a really good civil conversation tonight that'll get to answers for many of those questions if we can. Okay, so again, please be respectful when questions are asked and answered, and now we're going to get started if we're all set, okay? You'll hear me introduce the show now. Welcome to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. I'm Steve Kraske. Today, KCUR is at St. James United Methodist Church on the Paseo for a community Q&A session with federal elected officials to discuss what's happening in our nation's capital. Today, I'm joined by Congresswoman Sharice Davids, who represents Kansas's 3rd Congressional District, and Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who represents Missouri's 5th. He just may be familiar with this sanctuary as he was pastor of this church from 1972 to 2009. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that KCUR made multiple attempts to reach all members of Congress from our listening area and to include them in this conversation this evening. We reached out to each senator from Kansas and Missouri and the 5 representatives whose district cover our metro area on several occasions. Those not present tonight either declined or did not respond to KCUR's request. With that said, we'll now hear some opening remarks from our 2 representatives. We'll start with you, Congresswoman Davids. Please take a minute. Let us know what kinds of questions you've been hearing as you've traveled throughout your district in recent weeks.
Well, good evening, everyone. I've started needing reading glasses since starting this job. So a couple of things. I have a couple of remarks, and actually I will end up covering a bit of what I've been hearing from folks at home. So thank you to everyone who's joining us here in person today, and for the folks who are either listening or watching the stream. Thank you to KCUR for making this possible, and I think you already said this. Folks right now are looking for answers and trying to figure out what is going on, and I'm glad that we're getting a chance to do this type of event. I also want to just acknowledge my friend and colleague Emanuel Cleaver for the work that you do. I've learned so much from him. I'm glad to be with him tonight. I'm glad that I'm talking before him right now, because that was the thing. I was like, please let me talk first. So I know this is such a deeply concerning time, not just for the folks who took the time out of this beautiful day to come over here, but for those of us in Congress. For me, I know I'm deeply concerned about so many things I've been seeing. We have been hearing from literally record numbers of folks in the Kansas 3rd District, whether it's farmers worried about trade, tariffs, the Farm Bill, families feeling the strain of rising costs on everything from gas to groceries to prescription drugs. And then particularly in this area, the public servants that have been terminated, unfairly fired over this last couple of months. I think we're hearing a lot about the number of people who are concerned about threats to Social Security, to our freedoms, our reproductive freedoms, our voting rights. And I do think we're hearing an awful lot about when someone like Elon Musk, who is literally the richest person in the world, is granted unprecedented access to all of our personal data and information. That is something that has a lot of folks worked up. I personally do not think that this administration is acting in the best interests of hardworking Kansans or hardworking Americans. I think that what we're seeing right now is someone who's putting the needs, wants, and desires of his billionaire buddies ahead of everyday people. And when I first ran for and got to Congress, I always said that I will work with anybody, Republican or Democrat, if it means getting stuff done for Kansas, for the Kansas 3rd. That continues to be the case. And I will also say that from my perspective, if our democracy is going to work and our government is going to actually be able to govern, it is important to continue to be a professional. It's important to model good behavior. It is important to show up with open ears and open mind and look for ways to get stuff done and find common ground where possible. I have been able to do that, especially just recently. I have had 2 bipartisan bills pass. Glad you're sitting down. 2 bipartisan bills pass, which is an oddity for a Democrat in the Congress right now. They were both related to small business, one of them specifically around veterans. And I also have had the chance to work with people in the Kansas 3rd and in Washington, D.C. to do as much as we can to curb this fentanyl crisis that we're facing. I also will say that this is a time where we do have to figure out exactly how we're going to adhere to our values. Standing up for our values has always been important. It will always be important. It feels particularly important in this moment. I have taken votes in opposition of the current administration and the current House majority. We had this really partisan budget that would have made harmful cuts to Social Security, Medicaid, and so many other important services that, including veteran services that people in our communities depend on. And that budget was modeled after Project 2025, which maybe we'll end up getting into But I feel like they're getting antsy. I'll try to make it quicker. I'll make it quicker. But I do want, I guess the last thing I'll say is we have seen the Trump administration at least temporarily reverse some of the cuts and attacks that they're making, and that's not just happening out of the blue. It's happening because we are pushing back where we can, and we're looking for ways to make sure that we're highlighting just how damaging some of these policies are going to be. Yeah, so I'll stop there and turn it over.
Congressman Cleaver, please.
See why
1 minute.
I went first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank KCUR for doing this. I think this is, one of the times that tries men's and women's souls. And we're in a moment of darkness, make no mistake about it. And I think my colleague has painted a picture that is accurate and one that with which I agree. I also know that people are down because I hear it all the time. We get, when I say thousands, I'm not saying we get a lot and we just think it's thousands. We don't count the number of phone calls we get each week, and we get thousands, and everybody in Congress is getting thousands, which is one of the positive things, whether you know it or not, that we need to embrace. And from my perspective, a lot of these issues can be from my vantage point, I think that things may not be as dire as they could be, and it's because I see on the other side. I believe strongly and irreversibly that the power of the people is still greater than the people in power, and if you look across the history of the world, that's what happened. The people rose up. I'll say this, and I'm finished for right now. The Vietnam War was not ended by people in Congress or the White House. It was ended by college students who said, we're not going to take it, we're tired of it, and they demonstrated all over the country. The people can turn things around if they don't like the direction. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's start with what probably was the one question we heard more than any other in the last few days. How is Congress addressing the president's executive orders and actions that challenge congressional and judicial authority? Congressman Cleaver?
We have, when we left Washington about 8 days ago, we had filed about 135 suits addressing almost every issue that you could think about, that where there's an effort by the executive branch to take over both the executive and legislative branches. And we can't file suits as members of Congress. The courts have already ruled that we have no standing. The Speaker in the House is the only person who can file a suit on behalf of the House, and this Speaker is not going to do that. So we've been getting other groups, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund filed a number of the suits, and we're going to continue to do that. We have a 4-seat minority, we being Democrats, in the House and 4 seats in the Senate. And so until we can correct that, we're not going to be able to turn anything around legislatively unless we can turn some of the people around who are being represented, who represent you.
How concerned are you today that court decisions won't be enough and won't be followed by the Trump administration if it comes to that? Congresswoman Davidson.
Lawyer.
Not that kind of lawyer. I am a lawyer, recovering lawyer. So I am very, very concerned about I'm concerned about the prospect and also the fact that we've seen already statements and indications of this administration's at least they're touching the line of actively saying we're not going to listen to the courts, and I am a lawyer. Lawyers hold a special place in this society. It is actually unconscionable to me that we have lawyers who would ever say that we don't need to follow a court. No, we get the chance to live in a country where we are subject to the rule of law, and when I say we, I mean those of us in Congress, everybody in this room, every single person, including the president, up to and including the president of the United States, is subject to the laws of the land. And so I have a lot of concern around that. I also will say, and one thing that we have voted against actually was an effort by the House, by the Speaker and the Republican majority to reduce judicial power. And we voted against that. My hope is it won't go anywhere in the Senate. But this is an area where every single person should be concerned, because the foundation of our country is our democracy and our rule of law. And we have also again, I'm pretty sure Cleaver is on this too, but we're also part of amicus filings to push back against the administration.
What happens if the administration decides not to follow the courts, Congressman Cleaver? What's Plan B for Democrats?
Well, first of all, I'm very, very skeptical about whether they will follow the ruling of the courts. There's no evidence to that right now. I think what we will have to do, we won't be in a position where we can file a suit in terms of going to the courts. I think that's the time that we're going to have the largest, the most vociferous demonstrations in the history of this planet, because we're headed toward that. Because even at this very moment, right now, I have a question as to whether or not they're already ignoring the Supreme Court. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So we're just about there. There's been no declaration, but I think you're going to see some of the strongest attorneys in the country coming together saying this is it. And then I think we're going to have to try to mobilize, or our democracy is clearly going down the drain.
Congresswoman Davids, you heard your colleague here say that more than 100 lawsuits have been filed. What else are Democrats doing to sort of push back? What else should they be doing?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on. One is, of course, the lawsuits, and I can't speak for the Senate, but I can tell you that the Democratic caucus has been very involved in making sure that that we are doing everything we can to support those, whether it's the NAACP, as Congressman Cleaver referenced, or Democracy Forward, who is fighting for so many other of the issues that we're dealing with. Some of the other things that I do think that we, not just we as members of Congress, but we as the general public, should be looking at is, if you're a lawyer, is making sure that that you're participating in your bar, that you're participating in the lawyers who are in the room already know this, but we're supposed to police ourselves. And to have any lawyers who are not only violating their oath that you take when you become a member of the bar, but any oath that you take as someone in the Department of Justice or any federal employee, lawyers don't get to say we don't need to listen to the courts. It literally cuts against the oath that any lawyer has to take when they become a barred attorney. And so I think that there are areas where professionals, whether it's lawyers or others, can also make sure that they're participating. And then the other thing is continuing to reach out, whether it's my office or Cleaver's office or our senators. We're both in states where our senators are on the other side of the aisle and would have much more influence with the President of the United States right now than a Democratic House member. And so making sure that our that are Republican colleagues, because when you ask the question, what if they don't listen to the courts? What's the Democrats' plan? This is not a Democrat or Republican problem. This is every single person in the United States should be concerned if the president is not listening to the courts.
You know, Congressman Cleaver, some folks in the audience here might be concerned. Are Democrats doing enough right now? You hear some criticism of the party saying there needs to be more aggressive actions taken. Do Democrats need to do more, and what would that be in your view?
Well, I think there are times. I grew up in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in the days when it was dangerous, and I think that there does come a time when we need to have performative protests. My longtime friend Al Green and I, we grew up together, and he did one of the performative things at the joint session, and there are other people. Cory Booker did the same thing the other day, and it's very inspirational. I could hardly hold back tears as Senator Booker ended his speech the other night. And we can use those things as fuel, but you know, for us to, I don't want to mislead anybody by saying if we do this and this and this, the votes are going to change. I think we have to change some people. Lyndon Johnson met in the Oval Office with Martin Luther King, Ralph David Abernathy, Walter Fauntroy, and head of the NAACP, I'm sorry, Roy Wilkins. And he said, this is before he signed the Civil Rights Bill. He said, after they told him, you know, we need this bill signed, I'm sorry, the Voting Rights Act. We need this signed. And he told them something that I hope everybody in America can understand. He said, what you guys have to do is go out and make me sign it. Did you get it? Yeah. Okay.
Let's go to questions from the audience. I'm just looking for who's got it. Peggy Lowe from KCUR's got a question.
Can I just say one quick thing on that? Just because I do want to just kind of acknowledge, though, that we were kind of slow on the uptake in terms of the Democratic apparatus. I see your sign. Thank you, Lori. I happen to know some of the people who are holding the signs. I see you a lot. So I don't want it to seem like we're sitting here thinking that just because we now know here's the litigation strategy, here's what we're doing in terms of legislation and that sort of thing means that that the valid frustration wasn't there to begin with, because we were slow on the uptake. It took us a bit to get going, and I do think that we are moving in, we're on the same page, we're moving in the same direction. But yeah, it just feels like I feel like it's kind of weird not to at least acknowledge how.
Is that because you all were caught off guard by the volume and the pace of what was coming out of the White House?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, no question about it. We woke up one day and there was things going on in HUD and the CFPB and the FBI and the State Department, all in once. Flood the zone was their strategy, and they did. But I think we're back. We're off our heels now.
Peggy, you have a question from the audience. I can't hear you, Peggy. Hang on a second. We'll try and. Got that on? No, it's not on. We're trying to get it on right now, Peggy. Hang on a second. Just hang on just a second. Peggy, try it now.
What would you recommend? I think we're good now. What would you recommend average people do to best influence elected officials? Should they protest, send letters, emails, writing, phone calls, or all of the above? And specifically, a second person asked, if you do write or say call your Republican senator or representative and they don't respond to your concerns, what do you do?
You keep calling. And let me just tell you, almost all members of Congress, at either the end of the week or at the beginning of the next week, will have a count from their offices on the number of phone calls we get. I know every week the number of phone calls and letters we get. I mean, they can hang up the phone. I mean, the members, they'll know they got a phone call, and they know what the phone call was about. And I think understand that we have to move 4 people in the Senate and 4 people in the House, move them, and then we move the legislation. And they are now, some of them are becoming a lot less rigid in their magnetism. And so, I think that it is working. And I will tell you a secret. Some of those people who are voting and allowing things to happen in front of them know better, and they are not necessarily with it. It's unfortunate. I think it suggests a cowardice kind of an operation, but we can move people. If you can move some of the Southerners in 1965, some segregationists, to move them to vote for the Voting Rights Act, we can't even get the Voting Rights Act approved now. We're functioning right now without the Voting Rights Act. And it was approved in 1965 with many of the Southerners, segregationists, Dixiecrats, voting for it. But they were under so much pressure, they had to.
Congresswoman Davids, what's the most effective way for people in this audience and listening to reach and interact with a member of Congress going forward? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think if your goal is to interact with a member of Congress, the calling, the emails, that sort of thing is absolutely effective. I also, I guess I would also just say that we're here working, like, we go back and forth to DC. We do what we can to, the legislation, the actual, like, pushing back on the Trump administration is, I think that it probably, I know for us and for other people, anyone watching, it feels almost futile, but it's not. And I wish that it was easier to convey how much it actually does matter when people, especially right now, the Republicans are in the majority. They get to decide what comes to the floor, all kinds of stuff. But at any point, whoever is in charge in DC should be hearing from their constituents. And so we take those voices and we go to DC, and I know that Cleaver and I have had so many conversations about the ways that we interact with our Republican colleagues. And I can tell you that when I have folks in the Kansas 3rd sharing specific stories, I'm able to take that and convey that to a Republican colleague who sits on the Agriculture Committee with me, or the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee with me. And for us, that's the real place. If I can change the mind of 3 members of Congress on the other side of the aisle, that's the difference between something passing or not. And so we're going to continue to do that, but it sure does help when we've got folks hearing, our Republican colleagues hearing from their constituents about why cuts to Medicaid would be devastating. And in a state like Kansas, it would mean things like shutting down a bunch of our rural hospitals. So I do think that that is one of the most effective ways to continue to communicate with a member of Congress.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. You're listening to a conversation that was taped Monday evening at St. James United Methodist Church in Kansas City on the Paseo. We're visiting with two members of Congress, Sharice Davids from Kansas's 3rd District, Emanuel Cleaver from Missouri's 5th District. We have an audience of hundreds in front of me, 500 people or so joining us on YouTube this evening. KCUR Savannah Holly Bates has another question from our audience.
Yeah, so we have a question from a teacher who works in international education in Missouri but lives in Kansas, who's concerned about recent visa restrictions and detentions that are making it harder for international students to stay here, but also to come here. And interest in studying in the U.S. has dropped sharply. Are you able to push back on these policies or that are working against welcoming international students, or what's your strategy on that, especially as schools in our area have revoked student visas?
Congressman Cleaver, if you would.
Look, one of the worst things that's going on, there's so many worse things, but one of them is trying to keep trying to push foreign students away from U.S. colleges and universities. And the nation that loses the most is the United States. And one of the reasons is that, not spoken about, but we get millions and millions and millions of dollars annually for these colleges and universities from people coming to our elite colleges in this country. When I say elite, I mean all of them, to people coming from some of the foreign destinations and from which they come to the United States. And I think that we have to really push back on that. This has been something that we've been doing.
Push back how, Congressman?
Well, I think we have to push back in terms of the members of Congress doing things in Washington to let the administration understand where we stand. Now, we can introduce legislation to say stop it, and somebody very likely will, or maybe they've already introduced it. But the only person on planet Earth, not the president, but the Speaker of the House, is the only human being who can call a vote to the floor. Nobody else. And I think we have to. If you have a boring life and you look at C-SPAN all day, you'll see a line of people up from your left looking at your screen, and they're up standing in line writing. That means that we have a discharge petition where we're trying to bring something to the floor. We have to get 218 signatures to do that, but that's what we're doing. And people probably don't know that we're trying to get legislation to the floor. And we frankly almost turned something, we did turn it around for a few days. They didn't have the votes just before we left to pass that awful spending bill. And we pushed them all the way to the end. And we try to do that on every single piece of legislation. So when you're looking at C-SPAN, you see those people, those are the pushback people. And both of us are probably always in those lines.
Congresswoman Davids, you know, lots of visas being canceled. Lots of visas being canceled by 2 international students on the Missouri side. What are you hearing in Kansas? What do you recommend be done?
So I would say that the universities in Kansas are not immune from the awful policies that this administration is pushing. When we talk about the benefit, and I know Cleaver already talked a little bit about this, but the benefit of having our institutions be attractive to people from all over the world. Literally, students from all over the world come to go to, of course, KU, K-State. I mean, even Johnson. I went to Johnson County Community College, and we have international students that go there for different things. So, in my opinion, this is it. Again, I mean, it's almost like I can't use the word unconscionable enough when talking about these policies. But my hope is that, in addition to the discharge petitions and other legislation that we're filing, that we, on certain of these things, I feel like I'm about to blow everyone's mind here for a split second, because I'm going to say something that even my team is going to be like, what are you doing? like, rarely will you ever hear me say that I think that Sam Brownback knew what he was talking about. But even Sam Brownback recognized why it was important for us to have in-state tuition for our dreamers. And I think that there is an element right now of the climate, of the rhetoric, that even people who we might not agree on all kinds of policy stuff, but that you could normally depend on to support education, particularly public education, and to support students learning and coming here and bringing the wealth of knowledge and research capabilities to the United States and to our institutions. And right now, I do think that there are folks in the Republican Party in the House that we can probably get to do the right thing on some of these particular issues. I think that the students having their visas revoked is one of those issues. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not pie in the sky, and I'm not like Pollyanna about this stuff. But this is one of those areas where every single state, red states, blue states, it doesn't matter, they benefit from having robust universities. In some instances, this is literally the economic driver of their communities, and these are Republican members of Congress, and so we're going to be trying to figure out how we connect with those folks and try to find those places where we can create the opportunity to fix it.
Congressman Cleaver, do you want to hear more pushback from university chancellors, from university presidents? Are you getting the pushback that you would expect at a moment like this?
At Harvard, we are. I think.
Literally the only time in my life that I've been like, oh, yay, Harvard.
Yes. I think, you know, what I think is people are counting on is non-resistance. And so the first universities just folded. And now a large number of universities from all over the country joined in with Harvard now. And so they had one big college like Harvard to stand up, and then many more fell in. And that's what we have to do on a local level. We've got to get people willing to stand up.
Kate from KCUR has another question.
Hi. So I would say the majority of the questions that I have gotten are about bipartisan cooperation. And this person specifically thinks it's a messaging issue. Is there anything that the Democrats are doing to address this as a messaging issue?
About bipartisan.
When you say
again,
messaging issue around,
The Democrats are able to reach across party lines because of their messaging, how they are talking about these topics.
I don't think that's my problem in terms of connecting with people in the House. I don't think that probably for us, even though we're different people, we have different politics. I actually think that's one of the reasons that the Democratic Party has better policy, is because we do have a variety of thoughts, opinions, and approaches, and then we try to figure those things out. I have a feeling, though, that what folks are like the crux of what folks are feeling when they say that is, from my perspective, we get the strongest, longest lasting, most stable policy when it's bipartisan. It is not always possible to find bipartisan agreement on every single issue, but there are issues where we can. I do think that sometimes people, and I try to be as candid as possible with folks about this. I got 2 bills done already this year. They were both related to small business. I have had the chance to get bipartisan support on other pieces of legislation, including childcare, access to childcare, and making it more affordable and accessible. I have a piece of legislation that I've gotten a couple of Republicans to sign on to. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I think that we're going to see a bipartisan effort in this moment from a bunch of members of Congress on the other side of the aisle to push back on some of the main priorities that the current administration has. But I do think that there are places where we can find to work with our Republican colleagues on things like the student visas being revoked, like the Medicaid proposed cuts to Medicaid. I have not lost faith that we will be able to convince some of our Republican colleagues to vote no on gutting our Medicaid or Social Security.
Let me just tag onto that question, Congressman Cleaver. The Democrats are doing a lot, but it's like a gun with no bang. There needs to be more noise in their message. Let the world know of the resistance.
Yes, let me, first of all, let me address a little bit of that. In order for us to get her legislation through, she's one of the few Democrats who've been able to get anything across. You have to have a Republican on the bill in order for the Speaker to consider bringing it to the floor. I hope everybody understand. I mean, it's like a well, actually, they're the lead sponsor, but you can't do it alone. You have to have a Republican with you. Yes, I think that I think we're both trying to be careful not to promise something we can't produce. And I do think that we need a lot of noise, but if the noise has to be made in terms of the legislative branch in our committee hearings, which you don't see and you don't hear. I mean, that's where we're debating issues. That's where people are really laying out almost in a naked fashion where they are coming from. People were talking about the comment that Jasmine Crockett made. That was in a hearing. That was in a hearing, not on the streets. And most of us, I mean, I've been speaking at rallies in Washington and here. But maybe make no mistake, I'm not as performative as some people. Everybody can't be performative. I mean, everybody, we have to do what we do best. And we've got a variety of people, and they all have a role, and everybody's trying to play the role. But yes, we need noise, but it just can't be in Congress. We need noise all over the country. Everybody needs to be standing up and screaming, saying, this is wrong. Because the question is going to be asked in the 2025 crisis, where did you stand, Grandpa? What did you do, Grandma? It's going to be that kind of a situation.
Another question from the audience here. The federal government is one of Kansas City's top employers, employing some 30,000 workers in the metro area. Many of those employers, Congressman Cleaver, like the IRS, USDA, and the VA, have been impacted by layoffs or budget cuts in recent weeks. Regional offices are all experiencing uncertainty and fear that there will be future layoffs and cuts. What can Congress do to halt or reverse those DOGE cuts?
Well, I met with the IRS employees, and then we had a rally, and same thing with many of the labor unions whose membership includes a lot of the federal agencies. And we've talked about what the options are right now, and the options are just not what I would like for them to be. I would like to be able to stand up right here in this church and say, Sharice Davis and I can go back and we're going to do such and such, and it's going to turn this stuff around. If I could do that, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knows that that's what I would like to do, and probably most of you would like to do. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, next week we're going to go back and stop that. We're going to go out and we'll go over to the IRS building. We went over there and they tried to arrest us in Washington 4 weeks ago. We can go over there and do that. They tried to arrest me and Maxine Waters at the HUD building. We walked through the door, they slammed the door, 200 or 300 people outside waiting. I mean, we do what we can.
You don't have the votes.
I mean, but I'm not going to sit down and just watch them kick me in the face. I am going to look them in the eyes and say, you might be able to kick me. Howard Thurman, the great theologian from Howard University, said that if you step on a worm, the worm will wiggle, at least wiggle. And so if we're getting stepped on, at the minimum we need to wiggle, we need to scream and say what we can and do what we can.
Congresswoman Davids, what can you do to support federal workers who have been laid off in the Kansas City metro?
So I actually don't use the phrase laid off, they were fired. Unjustly. You know, the fact that we've got career civil servants who show up every single day, could have probably been making a lot more money doing something else. But the federal civil servants that I know, whether it's air traffic controllers or other safety specialists who work in for the FAA, the people at the IRS, the people at Social Security, the Veterans Affairs folks. There are so many people who have literally dedicated their career to some sort of program that is a public service. And I do think that I think that there's an element of a lot of people who don't realize just how important the federal government is to every single person's day-to-day life. And I think that us helping people understand that is probably a pretty crucial piece of this. It's not lost on me that civics education is not something that is highly valued right now by a lot of folks, but it's super important. And I think that, clap for civics. So one, we need to help people understand just how important the federal government's role is with all of these. Is there a conversation to be had about how we make the government more efficient? Absolutely. I mean, it's tax season. We need to make the government more efficient. Anytime someone has an issue, I'm sure you realize just how hard it can be to navigate the federal government. It should not be that hard. The answer, though, is not firing indiscriminately and thoughtlessly a whole bunch of federal civil servants. The answer is for us to take a thoughtful approach. This administration is, again, it is unjust and unlawful. A lot of these firings, those are making their way through the court. Unfortunately, this is going to be a similar kind of answer. We are working with, I know there's a number of folks who have brought lawsuits. The House Democratic Caucus is working with them. We are showing up. I was at that NTEU rally. And also where, you know, in some ways I think like raising the alarm, but I imagine maybe people are tired of seeing me on the nightly news because I'm constantly doing something with either federal employees, people who are potentially impacted by Medicaid cuts, and I can see.
Again, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. We're coming to you from St. James United Methodist Church on the Paseo in Kansas City. We're visiting with two Democratic members of Congress, Emanuel Cleaver from Missouri, Sharice Davids from Kansas. We invited Republican members to join us this evening. They declined or did not respond. We have another question from our audience from KCUR's Peggy Lowe.
And Steve, this is a good follow to what we were just talking about. What can Congress do to resist DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency? It seems like they are simply allowed to do anything they want, and Congress has no course of action, particularly regarding the unfettered access to our personal data.
Congressman
Well-
Cleaver, you want to take a run at that?
Well, we do have the Ending Doge Conflicts Act, which I think that I have a lot of thoughts on Elon Musk, but I think that when we see someone like Elon Musk, who's an unelected billionaire with that much access, not just to the President of the United States and the decision making there, but also to the personal information piece and the accessing our Treasury system, Social Security, the Department of Labor. These things are, again, from my perspective, I'm glad that they're in the courts because they, on their face, appear to be illegal. And I think that, for those of us in Congress, again, like, we've got this piece of legislation. My hope is that we can get one or two of these Republicans on there because Donald Trump did win the presidential election, but Elon Musk didn't win anything.
And keep in mind, he has billions of dollars in federal contracts right now with the United States government. Now, we
Which is
don't
the
think that they have the capacity to shut down any of the funded departments because Congress approved those in legislation. And so Congress will have to unprove those if they're going to shut it down. That's why we're filing suit again in some of the departments.
Kate has a question from our audience on YouTube this evening. Kate.
This person wanted to know why you weren't prepared for the flood the zone strategy.
So that why?
For the flood the zone strategy, why were you not prepared for that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I haven't gone into an election yet that I thought I was going to lose, and so I think most people go into the elections. I'm not trying to be, flipped. I think most people went into the election, thinking that they were going to win. I didn't think we were going to lose the Senate until late in the night before the count started.
But why weren't Democrats more prepared to respond more rapidly to what happened in those first days of the administration, Congressman?
Well, I think we had to look. We could. It was a dizzying moment for us. Everybody was saying, "Oh, hey, we need help over here." Somebody saying, "Yeah, we need help over here," and they were going in all directions. We were not organized for it. And if that's wrong, we were not organized. We're not. I would love for somebody to have been able to say, here's what we better do, because this is what they're getting ready to do. And so, but
hang on a minute. But I think the concern from the audience is going to be simply that you should have been ready. I mean, that's what you're elected to do, your leaders. Why weren't Democrats more prepared?
We weren't ready. I mean, if that's condemnation, that's fine. We were not ready for that. I mean, plus, I don't think our minds were that evil. That we thought these people were, yeah.
Just didn't. Hang on, we're going to
Would
do
you
this
guys
through
mind
questions
stop
here.
yelling like while people are talking?
Hey, we're going to do this the civil way, the public radio way. We have questions here. We have microphones. We're going to do it through our ambassadors from the station here. So, Congresswoman David, you were saying.
Well, I was just going to say that there's a lot of assumption that everybody knew exactly down to the T what the current administration was going to do. And hindsight is 20/20. So Project 2025 is something that we knew about, that we were communicating about, and we were pushing back against. We also have a president who said he didn't support Project 2025. So when we've got someone who is not tethered to the truth, I will say that when we're slow on the uptake, it's because we are tethered to the truth. I will also say that last time around, Donald Trump broke a bunch of norms, and this time he came out of the gate likely breaking a bunch of laws. That is not normal. It should not be the expectation that I have to worry about whether the President of the United States is going to break a bunch of laws.
Savannah Holy Bates from KCUR has another question from our audience.
So I've got quite a few questions about disability and protecting people who have Medicaid coverage. Specifically, we have one person who says, my grandson has cerebral palsy and has a feeding tube. He has a full-time nurse. How are you going to maintain his Medicaid coverage? And can you explain what impacts there will be to disabled people on Medicaid with the new budget?
Medicaid coverage, Congressman Cleaver.
First, we have a horrible secretary of HHS with whom we have no ability to work with. But the fight is in the budget right now, and the Senate is entertaining those slashes, and it's wicked what some of the things they're going to do. Medicaid is one of them. The people with disabilities are going to be hurt worse than they are already being hurt, and I think people in rural areas are going to get hurt, and they probably don't know it yet. But if there are any rural hospitals left, in my district, we had the I-70 hospital. It's a small hospital, about 30 beds, gone already, gone. They have to, if you get sick and you live in Sweet Springs, you got to come into Truman or drive to Jefferson City or Fitzgibbon Hospital in Marshall. It's awful. We're going to, we've already fought that battle 2 weeks ago in the House. The senators are fighting it now. And hopefully there are some people who will say, you know, yeah, maybe I don't want to go this far over in the Senate. And maybe people put pressure on them that they won't go that far.
You don't expect the entire Medicaid budget to be zeroed out, do you?
No. No.
They're looking at portions of it, recently added programs, but not wiping out the entire Medicaid program, the health care program for poor Americans.
No, but there will be Medicaid cuts because they won't be able to do what they have planned unless there are cuts to Medicaid.
You know, what about this overarching concern about the state of America's budget and its budget deficit? Democrats, Republicans, Independents all agree that the future trajectory, financial trajectory of the country is unsustainable. And you can also argue that some kind of systematic approach of reducing the budget ultimately would have been ineffective because everybody has a sacred cow they don't want cut. Ideas would have been considered and tossed out. The argument is that the only way to reduce the federal budget is to slash and burn it and then rebuild from there. How do you respond to that, Congressman Cleaver?
Well, they're slashing and burning, make no mistake about it. But we started in that direction. Nancy Pelosi appointed a commission, if you will, that it's called Congressional Modernization. And the goal of that committee, I was fortunate enough to be put on that committee. It's not a standing committee, and so we started meeting an equal number of Democrats with an equal number of Republicans, and we were making progress in all these areas, getting agreements on some tough things. And then when we lost the House, the new Speaker of the House immediately shut down the committee on modernization. Immediately. And so it's difficult for us. I mean, if you do that, that's a populist position, and then you turn around and vote to kill the process that was underway to do these dramatic cuts that are going to have to be made ultimately, or our country is going to be in a lot of hot water.
Congresswoman Davis, maybe what I'm driving at is how possible would it have been for Democrats, had you all been in charge, to make sustained and significant cuts in the budget to a point where our future financial path would be sustainable?
Well, I can tell you that when we passed the American Rescue Plan, we managed to bring down prescription drug prices, make sure that we were able to get vaccines out to people, And we also didn't raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year and made a $600 million payment on the federal debt. So it's possible. Some of the things that we're seeing right now, though, are, first of all, politicians saying one thing and doing another. We've got a bunch of folks who are saying they don't want to see cuts to Medicaid and then voted for the instructions or a resolution that would do just that. But we also know that things like making sure that we continue this process of negotiating prescription drug prices is going to save the federal government money, and it's going to save lives. We also know that there are ways for us to really take a hard look at in the federal system, there are efficiencies to be found. Making across the board 10% cuts here, we're going to cut $900 billion there, that's not the way to do it. Because what we're seeing is they're trying to cut federal jobs and thinking that, like, this is not a tech company. This is not a regular company. This is the federal government. The people that they're cutting, those jobs are being lost in our communities. Those are your neighbors. Those are the people your kids go to school with. Those are the people who are married to your kid's teacher. Like, this is such a nonsensical way to address costs and the debt that it's almost hard to argue against it because it is so nonsensical. Going through and just cutting a bunch of jobs, these guys cut our nuclear people and then had to bring them back. That is not going to help our debt. So forgive me if I'm not willing to argue with people who literally are making nonsensical arguments and doing things that are only putting people in danger and costing our government more money. I can't take those arguments seriously.
Congressman Cleaver, we haven't talked about the T word yet. I'm talking about tariffs. News about them has been hard to follow, but as it stands today, at least a 10% tariff on all imported goods from most countries, with higher tariffs being levied on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China. Local businesses already talking about the impact of these tariffs on the local economy. Just last week, a story about a local furniture store closing due to tariffs received national attention. What can you tell us about how you plan to support Kansas City area businesses affected by these tariffs?
First of all, Congress has not voted on the tariffs. And tragically, the founders granted the president, wide ability as a discretion. Thank you on the tariffs.
Can you claw back that ability at this point?
Yes. What we are doing now, we have legislation that would require, because it's constitutional, we have to do some legislation that go around the edges, and so we have legislation that will require a president after 100 days, the days may be lengthened or shortened, but a number of days, if Congress does not approve what the president's done, if the Congress does not approve the president, the tariff falls. And I think right now, one of the good news components here is that there is widespread anger and pain over these tariffs. I just had some people in my office before we left. The last people I met with today came in talking about the tariffs. It is absolutely horrible. The president has not been able to accept the fact that a tariff is a tax. And so we're dealing with somebody, I'm not sure. I mean, he thinks that he doesn't know it's a tax.
I was encouraged to see on the Senate side that there was at least some pushback from bipartisan pushback on revisiting the trade relationship with Canada, because again, it might not feel like it when you're making your phone calls, when you're, and I'm not going to name any of my senators' names, but I know who people feel like it doesn't.
We know who they are.
We know who. If they feel like it doesn't matter if they call, you should still call. But I would say that when we see the level of instability and chaos that Donald Trump's tariff, no tariff, this country, that country, we're doing 25, no, it's 10. The level of uncertainty that he is creating, even some of his hardcore supporters have started to push back on him, not just privately but also publicly. And I do think that that matters in terms of slowing that process down. We have a bill in the House side that is broader than just Canada. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that it's not going to go anywhere just yet, but it does matter for us to continue to push this stuff.
Congresswoman Davis, but what about that furniture store owner? What about other businesses that are going to be suffering here? What can you do, if anything, to help them now?
So some of the things that our office has done, first of all, there are going to be, unfortunately, because of the federal firings, contractors who might have been doing work with the federal government are also suffering, and then our especially small and medium-sized businesses that cannot absorb the volatility of their costs going up and down so much. We've been putting together resources to either help folks find jobs or also to get connected with, we have like a small business resource guide to help folks get connected with, normally I would say the SBA. But I also think that there are other community folks, whether it's like our community banks and that sort of thing. When we host our roundtables around small business and that sort of thing, we try to make sure to connect as many people as possible.
Okay. Kate, another question from our audience?
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions about the SAVE Act. People want to know what... Are we back? Okay. A lot of questions about the SAVE Act, and people want to know what the Democratic strategy is to block it.
The SAVE Act recently passed the House. Again, to remind people, would require voters to provide proof of citizenship in person when registering to vote, requiring people to present paperwork like a birth certificate or a passport. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, the SAVE Act, which I have supported, which I have opposed.
He for sure voted against it. I was probably sitting
Yes.
next to him on the floor.
Yes.
Multiple times he has voted against it.
And the whole design is, we've been dealing with this for the last 25 years, which is trying to suppress the vote. And that's what the SAVE Act is. There's nothing in it that's good. All components of it are horrible. We're going to vote against it and try to get as many people to vote against it as we can. This is what they've been hoping, what some of the people who've been supporters have wanted for years, since the Civil Rights Act was approved back in '65, and they're trying it again. This is antithetical to the Voting Rights Act, and this is what they wanted, and we will push back as much as we can. I mean, until the last vote is cast.
So the Senate has not taken up the SAVE Act yet, and this is a really good example of a piece of legislation that, when we've been using the phrase bipartisan, we've been talking a lot about our colleagues in the House or the senators or whatever. The SAVE Act has some really detrimental pieces of policy in there, including if you're married and you changed your last name, if you were adopted and your birth certificate doesn't match Not everybody who is adopted has their birth certificate changed to match the name that they
Some don't even
take
know
legally.
they've been adopted.
Yeah. So, new Americans, people who, there are so many different reasons why someone's name might not match their birth certificate, and this piece of legislation would call into question every single person. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. This is, again, not a Democrat, what are the Democrats gonna do? Every single person should be outraged about the SAVE Act. I think that making sure that you're talking to your senators, because right now, this piece of legislation that we weren't able to stop in the House is in the Senate. So the senators hopefully will understand that this would be like the largest disenfranchisement of voters in a really long time. And so that's probably the biggest piece is like, please make sure that your senators know where you're at on this, because they're the ones who are going to be voting on it next.
But they may not take it up because some of them realize, for example, you can use your passport. Only 146 million Americans have passports. That means 150 million don't.
Let me go to Savannah Hawley Bates with another audience question here.
Yeah, this is a multi-part question. We've gotten a lot of concern about what's happening with with sending people to El Salvador, to CCOT. What can you or other electeds do about the kidnapping of American residents or anyone living in this country and deportation at death camps like CCOT? This terrifies us. Anyone can be taken like Camara Abrego Garcia. And what happens if the money stops going to El Salvador? What happens to the people there?
Well, they're trying to send it now to Venezuela. Even the people who've been, they're trying to send everybody to Venezuela. But it's all still wrong and violates just about every principle of democracy and every principle by which this nation has operated since its founding. You know, one of our senators just went down, tried to negotiate a way in which we could get at least one of the prisoners back who has no business being there in the first place. The Trump administration has already ruled that they sent him there accidentally. People are huddling even today trying to figure out what do we do next? Do a bunch of us go down and protest or what? We're talking about that this very day.
I'm going to turn to another issue. We've touched on Medicaid. How about Social Security and Medicare, Congresswoman Davids? Talk about that, of cutting that. The president has said he'll protect Social Security. Do you think your Republican colleagues are going to push for cuts to both of those programs that so dramatically affect so many people in your district? Pull back the curtain for us. What are you hearing from your Republican colleagues?
I think the president is lying.
Lying in what way, Congresswoman
In
Davids?
that he has already demonstrated that he is looking for ways to undercut, undermine, and gut our Social Security program through the termination of some of our federal employees, to the budget proposals that he has sent over to the Congress. And I think that we will be dependent on a united front from the Democrats. And my hope is that there are, again, that what we'll see is a pushback. And you might not see it publicly. You might not see the pushback from our Republican colleagues publicly because, like Cleaver said, some of that stuff happens in committee. And some of it happens in the calls that are made to the speaker. So Cleaver made reference to an incident that happened a couple of weeks ago where the Democrats were able to convince a few Republicans to join us. And we essentially stopped the progress of the votes that week. because they were not able to get their procedural, they weren't able to pass their procedural votes. So you might not see you might not see it as a headline, but I will say that where the united front that we have combined with efforts with at least a few of the Republicans in the House, I feel good about the at least the prospects of us pushing back. Social Security is something that I don't expect Donald Trump to understand anything about Social Security or much else, but my Republican colleagues and the ones in the Senate, they do understand the Social Security program. They know, not all of them, but there's a bunch of them who do know that they've been paying into that system since, and probably in this room,
Right.
since people were 14 years old. So I would say that we do have, there is a lane where we might be able to stop them if they are able to bring it to the House floor.
How does Congressman Cleaver respond if there is a move to begin to cut some Social Security benefits?
Well, it's the third rail, and
Is it still the third rail?
it's still the third rail, and I think you can help a lot on this, and that is if they're going after Social Security, I can assure you they're going to lose votes in the Republican side. I mean, because this is not just impacting the urban areas, this is impacting the whole country. And I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to get people to stand up and oppose Social Security. They're going to, I mean, if they fool around and cut for Social Security, I can assure you that in a year and a half, when the next election occurs, Bozo could win because the people are going to turn against them, and the people who vote are the seniors, and they know that. That's why you're not going to hear much coming out of them on this on Social Security. That doesn't mean they don't want to.
You know, several times tonight, Congressman Cleaver, I've heard you suggest that you want to hear more from the American people on these different issues. Are you hearing enough? Is there a need for more contact from the American people on the range of issues we've been talking about tonight?
Well, it's always helpful for us to go back and take the floor and say, back home we had a meeting with the IRS employees, and this is where they are, and we can quote people in our congressional districts. I think we've got the information, most of the information. What we need is and I was saying this to Russ Carnahan this morning. Look,
the Democratic chairman of the Missouri Democratic Party, yeah.
Yes, and I said to him, look, what you don't want to, at their height, you didn't want to play the Kansas City Chiefs. The other teams in the league, they wanted to play Detroit and Oakland. They didn't want to play the Chiefs. And so what we need to have going for us right now is people organizing. Look, there's an election in another year and a couple of months. And if we had the most massive voter registration program throughout the United States of America, that will cause people to tremble. If we started right now working in every little precinct, now it's hard work, but that's what we have to do. I can tell you, people, I've seen all kinds of politicians. I've seen short ones, I've seen tall ones, I've seen skinny ones. I've never seen one that couldn't count. And you start out getting voters making commitments. I'm going to register to vote, and I'm voting against you, sir. I mean, I'm telling you, that stuff works. That works, and that's where we need to be going. And it gives us more power. I mean, they'll listen to us more.
Just a few minutes left. Kate, you have another question from our audience?
Yes, and this comes from a public school teacher. They said they are seeing students or undocumented students and families who are afraid of going to school, celebrating their cultures, speaking their languages, and participating in dual language programs. They want to know, how are you prioritizing the rights and safety of undocumented students and supporting programs that respond to all cultures, like multilingual and immersion programs?
I can start. So a couple of things. One, I would say that pushing back on the attempt to get rid of the Department of Education is one piece. I think that a lot of people don't realize how much federal funding actually helps our public education system, even though it's the state runs the K through 12 programs, but rural schools, special ed programs, there's a ton of stuff that actually, Title I schools, that funding actually comes through the Department of Education. I've been a strong supporter of the appropriations or the funding mechanisms that we use in the House to make sure that we fund those programs as much as we can. I'm always asking probably for more funding than we end up, I'm pushing for more funding than we're ultimately able to end up getting. And then I think that some of the other work that has to happen, and some of the things that I've been doing, is going to the various schools and finding out exactly which programs they use. The grants that our schools, whether it's the Olathe School District or Shawnee Mission School District or KCK Public Schools, there's a bunch of grant programs that are used to help facilitate the bilingual education, English as a second language, also making sure that those spaces are open and available to the various programs that help, whether it's citizenship classes or that sort of thing, because those happen at schools a lot too. So, I mean, I can't speak for Cleaver, but we'll continue to support those kind of efforts and those types of programs. I'm not going to remember the exact numbers, but whether it's the president's budget or the resolution with budget instructions that the House passed, that the Republican House passed, that contains a bunch of horrible cuts to those programs. So we're just going to have to keep pushing back and trying to see if we can increase those numbers so that the school systems don't suffer a bunch, because then we're going to start seeing teachers.
Congressman Cleaver, just quickly, I see you want to respond to this. Yeah.
Either last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago, I had Congressman Bobby Scott, who's the chair of the committee, the Education Committee. He's now the ranking member. We had a public event over at Penn Valley Community College, and where we had principals, teachers, school unions, college presidents in the 5th District, Rockhurst, Avila, so forth. And he sat down and we had a town hall meeting where they could ask questions. And one of the things that he reminded them is that Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education, and Congress approved it. It was legislation, Congress approved it. So they cannot destroy it. They can tear it up probably on the inside, but they can't eliminate it. And a lot of the things that we're going to have to do is try to stop as much as we can. And I am convinced that most of them are convinced as well, as they're going to lose the House. But it will not take place because of a declaration. It's going to be a lot of hard work. But we've got to reverse this, and that next election is going to be critically important to the history of the world, and we've got to win that House seat.
You know, I want to ask one final question, and you guys have been great tonight. So many thoughtful questions. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of concerns from Democrats out there about what this moment means. And I'm wondering, for the two of you, let's end on a hopeful note. Where is the hope in a moment like this if you're a Democrat in the United States of America right now? Where's the hope?
I want you to go back.
Well, I'd rather say, where's the light? This is a moment of darkness. This is the darkest moment of my life in this world right now. But darkness does not defeat the light. Light always wins. You take a light into any dark room, and automatically the light wins. And we are the light. You and I, it's not just us, it's everybody. We are the lights, and we are the ones that have to shine, because we are right and they are wrong. We are the light.
I was trying to get him to go second.
That's why you wanted him to go first.
Yeah, I was like, so a couple of things that I will say about hope. One is, I think that there's a range of people right now. Some people who have felt like the federal government never worked for them, would never work for them no matter what, still feel like that. There's people right now who are maybe for the first time realizing that this thing that we have, our democracy, the rule of law, is not guaranteed to us. It is a long battle, and actually, the work is never done. So if people think that we're gonna show up and go to a rally at the Department of Ed or HUD out in DC, and then miraculously we will all be saved and we'll have housing and urban development in the Department of Education, that's not gonna happen. So hope is not the same thing as like falsely puffing people up. What we do know is that when people show up, when we show up, and when we have hard conversations, yelling at each other is not a hard conversation. Making sure that you keep lines of communication open, no matter what, because we all got to live here together. Whether you voted for this president or not, he won the election. And we all happen to live in states where Donald Trump was elected by a really big margin. We all know people who we can engage in hard conversation with and talk to them about how this is impacting us. Not in a judgmental way, even though, don't get me wrong, I have my petty pieces. We all do. But in a way that is hopefully gonna help everyone understand truly how interconnected we are. Because the anger is real, the frustration is real, and it stems from something very real, which is a fear that our communities are gonna suffer. And every single day that, I know for me, every single day that I get to do this job, even for how crazy it is, and it's crazy, that like we right now have the opportunity to try to make some kind of difference that I hope in 50 years or 100 years from now, people will look back and say that was the time frame when we saved our democracy. So that's what we're doing right now.
Please join me in thanking Congresswoman Emanuel, Cleaver, Congresswoman Sharice David for taking time tonight. Once again, thank you to St. James United Methodist Church for your hospitality and having us here tonight. Again, this program should air either Wednesday or Thursday on KCUR's Up to Date. Thank you all for coming and paying attention to what's going on in our society right now. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.